I wrote a book back in March, and then coronavirus came. And while influencer marketing, you'll see at the very end, is still an important component that most companies still misunderstand and therefore don't get the value they should be getting out of it, there are a lot of important battles that marketers and businesses need to face today. And really, it starts with implementing marketing that is digital first. And the older the company, the harder it is to do. The newer the company, the more natural. But hopefully, we're going to put everything in perspective in the next 40 minutes, and you'll have a clear roadmap forward. So I was already introduced, but I am a global digital marketing speaker, consultant. I've spoken at a lot of events in many countries. I'm also an author and educator. I teach executives digital marketing at a few universities, Rutgers in New Jersey, and University of Jyväskylä in Finland, Irish Management Institute in Ireland. And I also have my own consultancy where I am a fractional CMO for several companies. So I'm also going to be talking a little bit about this, my new book, which came out in March, called The Age of Influence. And this book really influenced the way, pun intended, that I look at social media. And like I said, I'll talk more about that at the very end. So let's take a step back. It's easy as marketers to get lost in the weeds. And sometime we need to take a step back. And with the end of 2020 and the end of this conference, it's a really good time to take a really holistic view of those components that you need. Now, with digital first, we have to understand it's not like the old days where people look at a billboard, they see a phone number on the billboard, they call you and you get business. It just doesn't work like that. And in fact, the digital consumer, the digital buyer is all over the place. It is a non-linear purchase journey, which touches many, many different digital properties. Some you own, some you don't own, some you wish you owned. But regardless, this is the reality. We need to be everywhere. We can't be everywhere, but there is a lot we can do to control what we can. And that's going to be the focus of what I talk about. So because of this, businesses must have, especially with coronavirus, but I would argue even before coronavirus, consumers, buyers were always digital first. It was always companies playing catch up. Now more and more businesses realize with coronavirus, the only way to communicate with prospects, with customers, with the public is through digital means. So what are those digital means? Well, we need to meet people where they are. And really, when we dumb it down, there's only three areas, only three camping cars that we can be having a party at in order to engage with people digitally. Those three areas are search, social, and email. And really, everything you do digitally, I believe, is a subset of any one of these three things. And I know there's going to be some smart marketers out there that say, well, what about text and what about chatbots? And we'll sort of, combine those together with email. But regardless, this is where people are. This is how they use digital media. These are the opportunities for us to communicate with them. And we can't just do social without doing search. We can't do search without doing email. We need to do all three of these, I believe, to increase our chances of success in the new digital economy. So the digital landscape in 2021 is pretty clear. And it's been this way for the last 10 years, actually, with the exception of that last component, which I'm going to get to. And I love the presentation before me talking about employee advocacy, in essence, employees as advocates. So you obviously have the website, the SEO, the email, you need the content for everything, you need the social. And yes, you need influencer marketing because organic social media just doesn't work. It's broken for most companies. And I'll talk a little bit about that. And we're really going to redefine social media marketing and redefine influencer marketing at the end of this presentation. But before we get there, right, let's now go from this slide where I talk about all these digital channels, digital initiatives that you need to have, to let's dumb it down into relationships. I'm going to talk a lot about relationships during this very short 40 minutes. It's a funnel of relationships. Either people don't know you or they do know you, right? So half the battle is you need to get people to know you. And we work people in the funnel. Once they know us, then hopefully they become our customer. We convert them. And then the last step, which so many fail, is the advocacy step. And this is really critical with social media. You want people to do the talking for you. And so you need to be able to incite advocacy digitally. So when I talked about search, social, email, Where do these fit in? So the search, definitely, if you want to be discovered on Google, you obviously need to have a search strategy. We also have the social, where we can also get discovered in social media as well. Well, how do we get those people to learn more about us? Well, that's where email comes in, right? They landed on our website, they didn't convert. We want to continue the conversation. They might follow us on Facebook, where none of our fans ever see our content unless we pay for the privilege, but we also have email. This is often a step that is often overlooked, right? And then we get to the customers. So they become our customer. How do we keep in touch with them as customers? It kills me, and this is no pun intended, with coronavirus, so many companies that I do business with all of a sudden reaching out to me via email. Where have you been all this time? Right? Email is the best way to keep the conversation going. Social media is great as well. You just can't control who's going to see your message, who's not. And if you think a 30% open rate is bad in email, look at how many people engage with your social media content organically, right? 30% is not bad. And then we have the advocacy, and that's really where social media can and will become your best friend. So let's start looking at the search piece. And when we talk about the search piece, we talk about digital first content. So we need to be discovered digitally. And the only way to do that is through content and digital properties, obviously. So there's many different types of digital content types. I think that text or a blog embedded in your website is the most popular type of digital content. Now, there are some companies, when we get into YouTube, we see that people, personal brands, influencers have been more successful than brands, but there's still a lot that you can derive from having video content on YouTube. It's unfair to lump social media together with photo, but I think visual content clearly outperforms anything else in social media these days. So we'll just say, if your photo, story, dancer on TikTok, we'll just say that's all sort of social media. And then we have the audio, which is the podcast. So without a doubt, the text, for the purposes of most companies, is the most important. But that's not to say that YouTube and podcasting are not important, because they actually get more important simply because there's less competition and more demand. It's a supply and demand, which says you might actually have better luck on YouTube or podcast than getting people to discover your content on Google. Now, this isn't to say you don't need a blog. I would start with a blog, but if you're trying to get more for your content, these are two channels that more and more companies are investing in 2021, something you should look into as well. But at the end of the day, even if you have a podcast or a YouTube video, you're bringing people back to your website, right? So your website is your digital gateway. And in fact, it's more than just a digital gateway. It has to become your discoverability gateway. If you just have the mindset that you're going to display all your products and services on your website, you could do that in a PDF catalog. You want your website to become discoverable. And the way to do this is by building a library of content, because people aren't searching for your product. They're not searching for your service. They're not searching for your brand name. They're searching for solutions to their problems. And the only way to be discovered in such a paradigm is for you to have content that actually helps them find solutions to their problems. I call this a library of content. There's a lot of different ways of saying it, but you need to have this. And this is most efficiently managed in a blog. And it's not just a blog for prospects, it's a blog for customers. It's a blog for every stage of the funnel. It may be a blog comparing your product with a competitor's product. We see a lot of companies do. Think about the content that every stage of the funnel your potential client or your current customer might need. And I think you'll have lots of ideas. And if you haven't done this for every stage of the funnel, well, this is going to be your homework for your content creation team. So how do you create your content library? Now, I know that for some of you, you've already been doing this. But once again, going into 2021, you've probably already done your keyword research. Have you done a new look at search intent, right? Have you actually put these keywords in, looked at the top 10 Google results today in your target market on your target device, and see what comes up, and see if you were to compete for this keyword, is it actually going, are you actually going to be potentially successful? And is it the type of content that people are looking for when they type in that keyword? We cannot rely alone on keyword research. And when we do analyses and we do confirmations with search intent, we begin to understand the relevance of the content that we need to create. We may understand that some keywords we shouldn't try to target. We also understand that we might be able, through one piece of content, actually be able to rank for several of these keywords because they're showing similar results because the search intent is similar. We also need to optimize for featured snippets. We also need to try to get into the people also ask box. Now, SEO today is very different than it was 5 years ago. And there are many things we need to do from a content and a structure perspective to increase our chances that we appear. Because if we do, we're now above the fold, pretty much a number one result in Google. And so what I recommend is, if there's one major category of product or service, think of 52 keywords, think of 52 posts, think of blogging once a week. And there you have your content library for that product or service. If you only have one product or service, it's easy. If you have many, it gets a little bit more complex. But the idea is you don't need to create hundreds of blog posts, and you should be blogging once a week if you really want to become discoverable over time. But we also need to understand the longevity of our content. And this is where, when we compare those different content mediums of text, which gets indexed in Google, of video, which gets indexed in YouTube, of audio, which gets indexed in Spotify and Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts, the lifespan of a social media post is extremely, extremely short. So when we create content on these other platforms, including our blog, we actually can still rank and get traffic for content we created years ago, if not more than a decade ago, as I can attest to. So I couldn't find a great stock photo of a hamster wheel, so I had to borrow this image from Amazon. It's actually a really cute picture. But I've had so many marketers say, Neal, I need to get off this hamster wheel content creation, especially if you're a smaller business. And I would argue that you can, because you don't, like I said, you don't need to create hundreds of blog posts. If you have those 50 blog posts or 25 blog posts, you create them once and you republish them every year. You go from content creation mode to content revision mode. And you make sure they're always evergreen. You update them with the latest information. And boom, you have now created a really, really efficient content marketing program, because it costs a fraction of the time to revise a post than it is to publish. It took me a long time to figure out why, every year I was writing a blog post, the best social media books of 2010, of 2011, the best marketing conferences to attend in 2015, 2016. And I was creating separate blog posts for each of these, where my competitors just had the same post that they kept on revising. And it always had a newer date stamp and it had more backlinks. It's because they're revising. I think more and more companies need to realize this and really move into a revision mode once you have that core content done, and be really good at making sure that all your content is revised at least once a year. But what I've learned, and maybe what some other businesses and marketers listening, is that content alone, unfortunately, does not guarantee discoverability. The rules of SEO change every year, and you might have the best content, but at the end of the day, Google is looking at a number of different factors in order to rank content. And I would say in 2021, for this discoverability of your content to be successful, it comes down to obviously that keyword research and all those things I talked about. It obviously comes into optimized content and just the best content out there. But it also comes down into authoritative backlinks. How does Google know if you're an authority or not in your industry? It knows when other people link to you. And that's the missing link, pun intended, that I think a lot of companies don't invest enough into. And I'm not talking about doing black hat and buying fake links. That's not what this is about, right? And I want to talk a little bit about what this is about here. When I talk about this, I talk about relationships. This is a big part of influencer marketing as well. Relationships with other sites, relationships with sites that rule your industry, that are appearing in the top of the search rankings. Some might be competitors that you probably won't be able to, reach out to, but some are just industry or industry blogs, personal blogs, media blogs, whatever. A lot of these accept content from other people, from other sites. This is called guest blogging. I know guest blogging doesn't have a good name, but If you blog on the right places and leverage the power of the backlink, from Google's perspective, more and more websites are pointing to your website. It's just as easy as that. So this is a strategy that still works. And remember, I talked about taking the time of content creation, putting it into content revision. Now you can free up your content creation time to create great content from other websites and to create relationships with them where maybe after blogging once or twice, they naturally start to link back to your website because you've developed that relationship with them. We can take it one step further, not just relationships with other sites, but relationships with other bloggers. I recently noticed this when I did a competitive analysis with someone that was getting a tremendous amount of backlinks and authority just out of nowhere. And this person, who was a personal blogger, was getting backlinks from all these different websites. And when I did an analysis of the backlinks that the person was getting, it came from a group of about a dozen people. There are writers that write for several websites. And in developing relationships with them, this can also help generate mentions of your brand and backlinks. Comes down to relationships. This is influencer marketing for SEO. But go into your industry, do some backlink analysis, look at articles that your competitors are getting backlinks from, look at content that appears top in the search, and see who the writers are and see how you might be able to develop a mutually beneficial relationship with them, which is basically influencer marketing, right? So influence is really interesting because in all of digital marketing, Charlie D'Amelio, PewDiePie, Kim Kardashian, these are not the biggest influencers. In the digital space, the biggest influencer is Google. I talked about influence and content discovery, and in digital, Google is the biggest influencer in all of this, right? And the more influence you yield, and there's no clout score for Google. I mean, there is something we used to call PageRank, and there's domain authority, and different metrics being developed by different SEO tools companies. But in general, the more influence you yield, the more people talk about you, right? The more people search for you, the more people link to you, the higher your authority, the greater the discoverability of all of your content. And this explains why there are some companies that just show up at the top for any given query, like Wikipedia, right? It may not, well, in Wikipedia's case, it often is the best content, but in other cases, it may not be the best content, but they have the authority, even if they're not, even if you don't see them authority on that topic, right? Because they talked about it and because they already have authority in Google's eyes, they'll just show up at the top. And this is really what we want to do more of in 2021. And obviously, pay-per-click ads. Until you get organic traction, that's where you want to, make sure that you're discovered in search engines, either organically or paid. So obviously you want to continue to do that even in 2021. I think of all the areas though, going forward, where companies can do more work is really in the email and social, beginning with developing digital relationships through email. Because now that they found you, whether it's through pay-per-click or organic, now what? What are they supposed to do if they don't buy from you? And we know from this data comes from B2B, but it's equivalent to B2C. It takes many touches to convert a generated lead. Once people hear about you or find out about you, it may take several times for them to hear about your company or see your company in order for them to do business with you, right? What is the best way to get repeated touches? It's email. They come to your website, they go off. Sure, you can try to retarget them, and that's another effective technique. But email is an even better technique because you can guarantee that you're going to be in their inbox. And what's interesting when you think about email is that it also helps you control the research phase. Often people or businesses are, they're doing comparisons on different sites. And if you can get them to read your emails about why they should be choosing your product and why, the industry is going in the direction that your product roadmap is going, what have you, you have the ability to influence them to a great deal by controlling that research phase. And the stats are also incredible, right? There's more email accounts than social media users. We know that email does directly influence purchase decisions. We know that your message is more likely to be seen than on social media. And if you think a 30% open rate is bad, how many people get impressions of your posts on Facebook? It's nowhere near 30%. You're lucky if you get 1%, actually. And the ROI is really incredible because the ROI of email marketing often is in the monthly subscription fee of the email marketing software, which might be in the tens, the hundreds of thousands of dollars, but it's often a fraction of what companies pay for content creation, for events, or for advertising budgets. So that's why there's a tremendous amount of ROI that you can find in email marketing when done right, because the cost is fixed and it's usually very low. Excuse me, let me just get a sip of coffee here. So now the question is, well, how do you grow your list? How do you reach out to more people in email? And you can ask people on your website to subscribe. You can ask your social media followers to subscribe. You could do paid advertising, but you're probably not going to be very successful. Excuse me. You need an incentive to get people to subscribe. This incentive is not going to be giving away Bitcoins like you would think from this image, but the incentive is something called a lead magnet, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with. But the lead magnet's the incentive, and really the lead magnet should be a combination of something that provides value. It gives an easy win or solves a problem. It generates demand for your products and services, and it qualifies purchase intent. A common way we see a lot of B2C e-commerce do is sign up to get a 10% discount on your first order. You know that you're providing value. It's an easy win because it's 10% off. It generates demands because now they're on your list and they've showed a purchase intent because they want that 10% discount. That's why they signed up. So that's a perfect example of a great lead magnet. Obviously, in B2B, it's very different, but there's just a lot of different types of lead magnets that exist and a lot of different ways of providing value to encourage people that discover you and land on your website to take the conversation one step further. And when I was growing up here in the United States, we sang this song like in kindergarten: make new friends, but keep the old. One is silver and the other is gold. And this means that email marketing is not just about prospecting and lead generation. It's also about your customers. It's keeping in touch with them. It's letting them know about new products you have. It's providing them, seasonal reminders of things. And this is where I see so many companies, out of the woodwork starting to send emails after coronavirus. Uh, it is much easier to get business from your current customers or to get more business. The cost of acquisition is much greater than the cost of getting new or referral business from your current customers. And that's why remember to keep in touch with your current customers through email. And now, obviously, we can use very, very sophisticated marketing automation to further deepen that relationship. This is a screenshot of I use Active Campaign. There's obviously Salesforce, Adobe, with Pardot, Marketo. There's tons of very sophisticated enterprise software solutions out there. But if you're not taking advantage of this, you're really not scaling your email marketing and you're missing out on opportunities to further deepen that digital relationship. So now we get on to part 3, which is social media. And I'm going to ask a lot of you by asking you to, it's time to put a reset on how you think about social media. And let me explain what I mean here. I've been saying this for a decade. We're in the second decade of social media, that social media was made for people and not for business. It was made for people to share what they had for breakfast, what their baby is doing, that they're getting married. It really wasn't created for businesses to send out promotional posts. And really, because social media was made for people, when you think of it in terms of collaboration and you think of it as a place to make friends rather than a one-way advertising communication channel, you begin to derive much greater value from social media. Now, I gave you a funnel at the beginning. There's no email when it comes to social media. If they follow you and they engage with you, you already have a one-on-one conversation. And if they're following you, you already have permission to send them a direct message, right? And which in some social networks, you don't even need a permission. But the funnel of social media relationships, I talk about creating relationships in social media, begins with the people that don't know you, the general public. How do we get them to engage with us, to follow us? And then how do we get them to become an advocate? And how do we help them become an influencer so that they can greater influence what people think about our product? Now, this is not a webinar on the Japanese tea ceremony, but having spent a great deal of time in Japan and having learned about the tea ceremony, what's important here is that every engagement is an opportunity to deepen a relationship. Every time someone follows you, someone mentions you, someone comments, It is a unique opportunity, a once in a lifetime opportunity to develop a relationship with someone. Just like whenever you partake in a tea ceremony with a unique surrounding, unique tea, unique people, it is also a once in a lifetime opportunity to absorb that atmosphere and find new meanings in life around you and in those relationships. I got a little Zen going in this presentation. Let me give you an example so that we get back into the real world of marketing. This is an example of someone from AppSumo. AppSumo is a marketplace for startup software, B2B software. It's actually a great platform if you were to check it out. But what's important here is I mentioned AppSumo. I shared one of their blog posts on Twitter. Now, there are tools that allow you to find the email addresses of people that have social media profiles. She could have reached out to me on Twitter, in which case the direct message may have been lost, but she wrote me an email. Hey, we appreciate the mention on Twitter. We're going to give you $50 credit for mentioning us. Just let me know which account is registered on AppSumo. And I was an AppSumo user. I did have an account and I got $50 of credit. She was very happy that an influencer was mentioning her and an influencer that was actually a customer, right? But she took the relationship one step further. She took it to the advocacy stage. She said, hey, I don't know if you do affiliate marketing, but you'd be a great candidate for our affiliate marketing program. You can, let me know and you can sign up here, right? Taking that relationship from customer to advocate. Very powerful example that when someone mentions you, you just might not even think about doing that. So digital influence is everywhere. I happen to have a lot of followers on Twitter, but the way that the influencer marketing industry looks at influence has changed as well. They would normally just look at number of followers. And when they look at number of followers, they were always emphasizing you need 1 million followers or, you need to have 50,000 followers. And then they talked about micro influencers that had 10,000 followers. And now more recently, we talk about nano influencers that only have 1,000 followers. So I say, look, if it only takes 1,000 followers to yield influence in social media, which I do believe, then let's look at influencer marketing in a very, very different way, not based on number of followers, but based on brand affinity. Who likes, knows, and trusts our brand? The people that like us the most, and once again, piggybacking off the previous presentation, employees. I mean, they're invested in your company, right? And I think that employee advocacy programs have failed because they haven't treated employees as influencers. And I think when you do that, and when you treat people internally the same way you treat influencers externally, it unleashes a very, very powerful marketing weapon onto the world. But you also have your customers. Of course, they're your fans. They're buying product from you. They like your product, right? And then you might have ecosystem partners, especially in B2B industries, value-added resellers, system integrators, distributors. You have that in B2C as well, obviously. But these are the people, especially if they have over 1,000 followers. If you're a B2B company, your salespeople are influencers. If they have, if they're working LinkedIn day in and day out and they've developed a network there that listens to them, they are your biggest influencers. And guess what? They monetize their influence not by posting photos on Instagram, but through the commissions they get on the sales they develop, right? So it's a really easy way to look at your own internal influencers. And I'd say your CEOs, your executive team, they also get paid bonuses if you do well every year. They should be your biggest influencers because they're the face of the company. Then we go further. With social media, we have the concept of followers and we have the concept of people that mention us in social media, right? Or that check in at our location on Instagram. Maybe not even following, maybe not mentioning, but they know of us. Or we have people that subscribe to our email list. This is also people that have brand affinity. They may not be a customer or follower, but somewhere along the line, they're on our list. They signed up for that 10% off coupon, what have you. And then you have people below that, right? And this is the problem with influencer marketing is brands reaching out to people that may not even know, like, and trust you. And those people agreeing to work with you because there's money involved. So the relationship becomes transactional. It becomes, for lack of a better word, a one-night stand. Boom, thank you, and that's it. There's no long-term ROI. When you work with people that already like, know, and trust you, there is long-term ROI. They might already be talking about you. And when they begin to talk about you, they're going to talk about you even more because the relationship, hopefully the special relationship that you create with them. Now, you may be thinking, Neal, everyone's an influencer then. All of my employees, all of my followers are influencers. And that's not the case. Now, this is something that was theorized about 15 years ago. It's called the 99-1 rule. It looks at basically internet users, and it says 90% of internet users are lurkers, right? It's like, you see someone on your Instagram story, and you go to their profile, you see they haven't posted in a year, but they're always looking at your Instagram story. This is a great example of a lurker that isn't publishing comment, and they may not even be commenting on your comment, right? So 90% of internet users are lurkers. 9% actually publicly engage with that content through commenting, liking, what have you. And then 1% are the actual content creators. One in every 100 users. Now, with social media, I'd say it's democratized content creation. Maybe it's 5 or 10%. But with a platform like Instagram with 1 billion users, there's probably not more than 50 million users that publish content regularly. And that's why when you see a nano influencer, someone that has 1,000 followers in any given social network, as an employee, as a follower, as a customer, think of them as being in that top 10, 5, or even 1%. It is a finite number of people, and you want to treat them as influencers because every influencer is a content creator. And there's much more value in influencer marketing than just having them amplify your content. Now, when we talk about social media, we used to talk about word of mouth marketing. I think a lot of companies forgot that social media is about word of mouth marketing. And the problem is that your organic content and your ads are not inciting word of mouth. What incites word of mouth is when people talk about you. And if people are already talking about your brand, that's great. Let's work with those people to incite more word of mouth. But if not enough people are talking about you, that's where you want to engage with influencers. And there's many different ways that you can collaborate with social media users. You can, number one, start a relationship, ask them how they collaborate with other brands, as many people are being contacted by other brands. You can give them product in exchange for a review. You can provide them a discount code that they can share with their community. It makes them look good, makes you look good, obviously. And I think what we're seeing more and more of is what you see in the bottom here of engaging them to create content for your brand, and even taking it one step further and making them a part of your content or content marketing. So I'll just give you one case study of a brand that does this really well, and it really covers everything I talked about. This is a watch brand called Rosefield. They developed a brand ambassador community open to everybody who loved their brand. They recruited from their email database, their online customers, and their Instagram followers, everybody in their brand affinity. They would engage this community for content creation, for content amplification, and to refer new members, other people that might be interested. And there was no money changed hands. It was providing exclusive access to new products that their fans would want and store credit points product. No money whatsoever. And the results are pretty impressive. I won't go through every one of these, but they've seen incredible ROI from doing this. And this is the type of program, whether you're B2C or B2B or even a nonprofit, that I think you should have in place to create your own army of nano influencers in social media. And I believe that your collaboration with influencers can actually provide you all the social content you need. In fact, I would challenge you to be able to publish daily content on social media that comes from your fans. A 100% user-generated content strategy that we've seen many iconic brands, especially on Instagram, like Disneyland or Ritz-Carlton hotels do. But we don't stop there because this is digital marketing. We can include this influencer-generated content, or generally speaking, user-generated content on our product page where we know there are a lot of benefits. We can get a lot of interaction and bring people closer to buying from us. We can use this content in our ads, and our ads will perform better. We can put this on our website and get a much greater conversion rate because people see not stock photos of our product, but they see what it actually looks like on people that look like them. And let's not stop there. Let's actually put user-generated content in our shopping cart, and we can derive incredible ROI from doing so. So, concluding thoughts. The ingredients for success are not new. SEO, email, this has been around. This is nothing new, right? But I think the ingredients that you need today need to be a little bit different. I talked about a lot of things. I don't even know if this summarizes everything I talk about, but from search, email, social, obviously the role of content, but also the role of relationship, of engagement, of influence, of discoverability, of longevity, of advocacy. These are the components that a digital first marketing program in 2021 really needs to focus on, because while the ingredients might be the same, I think everybody listening here needs to create your own digital recipe, because how you are doing this next year needs to be very different, I believe, to be successful to how you did it last year. I want to thank you all for sticking through to the end of the presentation despite the technical difficulty. If there's any questions you'd like to privately ask me, please feel free to reach out to me on social, my website. And if you enjoyed my presentation, I hope you'll check out my podcast for those podcast listeners, the Maximize Your Social Influence podcast. Kevin, I'll hand it back to you.
So I have a question: content differentiation or stick to similar across all formats, blog versus Facebook, etc. What are your thoughts?
Oh, by the way, oh shoot. So when it gets converted to a PDF, yeah, you know what? It shoots up.
Now, what? Yeah, that's what it's doing. So what I'm going to do is load
Okay.
two different files, one, and then Yeah, that is really odd.
Yeah, the question of content, every one of these channels is unique. So I know that there are a lot of people that say, there's a lot of people I see this a lot in podcasting, right? Well, we'll do a live stream, we'll put the audio up on podcast, and then we'll create a blog post with a transcript, right? And then we'll share a image of like sound, like a sound image in social media. And what happens is you sort of fail on every single one of those channels. Live stream, if you can get a lot of people, that's great. But when people listen to the podcast, they're listening to like comments and conversations. They don't understand what's going on because they weren't at the live stream. The archived YouTube may not do as well unless it was obviously a really, really good live stream. The blog post is just a transcript, which, in general terms, unless you're optimizing it and it looks like a blog post, it's not going to do well from an SEO perspective. So, repurposing can work, but ideally you want to create unique content for each one of these platforms. The way that you would introduce something on Facebook would be different than you would introduce it on your blog, because your blog should really be Google facing, whereas on Facebook, your content should be Facebook fan facing. So on your website, it might be textual content. On social media, we know that visual content performs better, whether it's a photo, whether it's a video, whether it's a live stream, whether it is a story. So if you want to, bring people back to your website, maybe you have a blog post that you want to share on your Facebook. It's probably more effective to create a 60-second video of someone introducing what that content's about with a link, rather than just posting a link on Facebook, as an example. And I think with Instagram, it gets even more difficult. So ideally, it's not this notion of same thing, post everywhere. You might be effective with some types of content on some networks, but in general, especially when you think of Twitter having a character restriction, you think of the use of hashtags on Instagram, the different visual formats, you ideally really want to customize each piece of content for each network. And I would say it's not about publishing more. It's sort of like less is more. Be more effective with what you have would be my advice.
I have one question. What do you think is the most important form of marketing that people need to focus on uh, for 2021? And I know that it's all of them, because I would say the same thing, but I'm trying to start. If I left this presentation, despite the technical difficulties, was fantastic. And when you start thinking about all the things that you sort of chop through, and you broke it down to the three, with how we reach, is there any one that jumps out at you more, that is your favorite, if you will?
So we all know that there's no cookie cutter approach to this, and
100%.
everyone's recipe is going to be different. There are some companies that are already really sophisticated in marketing automation. There's some that aren't. So I would say a general answer is start in the order in which I presented. Make sure that you have your discoverability for search in order first. then move on to email, then move on to social. You
Fantastic.
you can blow it up in social, but guess what? If your website ain't good, because that's where you're going to bring people to, that's where you close them, and then you have the website, but then you don't have a way of bringing the conversation forward for people that don't buy from you. That's where the email comes in. So I know that social is the big shiny thing, and I blog about it. I've written books about social media marketing, but I think that inciting word of mouth through influencer marketing should be replacing your organic social media as much as possible in 2021.
Yeah.
So hopefully that gives you some insight as to where I'd
No, it
invest my
does.
marketing budget in next year.
And you and I have talked about this before, but again, fantastic presentation. You handled that with class. And this is a fantastic book. The newsletter is fantastic. I've read a
Thank you.
bunch of blogs, and I would highly encourage people to go follow Neal. He's got great advice in the marketing and digital marketing world. So fantastic. Again, we'll touch base later, but great job.
Thank you all for sticking through the technical difficulty as well, and best of luck to you in your digital first marketing.
You got it. Take care. Bye bye, Neal.
Bye bye.